Welcome. My name is Camille Bignani, and I'm hosting the roundtable today. We have a pretty exciting session coming up. It's called The Big Idea, Innovation in Living Learning Communities, and I'd like to introduce our speaker for this session, David Cutler. And as David enters the session, I will introduce him. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, David Cutler is known for leading immersive innovation games. His powerful team-based problem-solving experiences empower arts, education, and business communities to solve creative challenges while becoming better collaborators. And he is also a professor at the University of South Carolina. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to see you. It's great to see everyone here. Please hold your applause. It's the invisible audience. Is it okay for me to share a screen?
Yes, I'll pass the time over to you. And audience, if you have any questions during the session, please feel free to send them in the chat and Q&A, and we'll take care of those. The floor is yours.
Fantastic. All right. Let's see if this is showing the right way. Great. Well, thank you all. It is a pleasure to have some time as part of this very important conversation about living learning communities focused on entrepreneurship and beyond. Today, I wanted to share with you some big ideas I have about innovation in living learning communities. But before I do that, I just wanted to share a little bit about my weird job to give some context to this conversation. I was hired in 2012 by the University of South Carolina as a faculty member in entrepreneurship and innovation, which may not sound that strange on its own until you realize that I was hired by the School of Music, which is not normally where you hear those words spoken. But historically, music programs, and this is true with a lot of other disciplines and will become quite relevant as we move forward. Music historically has done a great job of cultivating outstanding artists, but often to the detriment of just about everything else. Like, how are you going to make a living doing that? How do you balance personal finance? How can you expand the demand for what you do and the impact? How do you find your voice? How do you integrate technology? And so many other questions. So my job was really to fill in all those other gaps. But being at the university, I wound up taking on a number of other roles that put me in direct contact with a lot of other places in the university. Of particular note, in 2018, the president of the university at that time called me into his office and he said, David, you know, I've been thinking about creativity. What do you think about having a focus university-wide on creativity? In fact, maybe it would even be a year of creativity. What do you think about that? And I went out thinking, I believe he's just given me a job to do. So I took it and decided to run with it. How do you get a huge flagship university with 38,000 students and 14 schools and so many different disciplines to come together behind any idea, and certainly one as wonderful as creativity, which touches almost every field, but of course, creativity can't be everything or it is nothing. So we defined what that was and launched something we called USC Creativity, where C did kind of double duty. And there were some great things about it. We had a book of the year that people across campus read. We hosted something called Create a Vibe, which featured 100 expressions of creativity from every college on campus. There was a week-long design challenge where highly interdisciplinary teams solved a problem. And then I helped several of those leaders design their own design challenges, which were then launched over the next 12 months and the like. So it was really great to bring together the whole university with a common theme. One of my big takeaways from that was that maybe the biggest asset of a flagship university, or really any university environment, is that there are so many dang smart people from so many fields in such close proximity. Now, as an innovation specialist, you know, innovation is rarely about just having that magical eureka aha moment. Most often, it requires taking a concept from one place and applying it somewhere else. So with all of this human capital, it would seem that universities should be the hotbed for innovation in our society. And yet often we are places that are quite averse to change. And part of that reason, one of the culprits for that, is often that we live in these silos where we might not know what's going on across the hallway, let alone across campus. But if we could just shake that up a little bit, and we have all of the answers we need, but if we could just approach it in a little different way, we might be able to create a truly innovative environment. So that was a really great experience to work across the entire university, focused on creativity and innovation. Since then, I had a few other positions, went away, served as a dean somewhere for a year, came back. And in 2023 summer, so right before the beginning of last academic year, I took over as the faculty director of a living learning community in entrepreneurship and innovation. It was not a new community. They were founded in 2019, so right before kind of COVID struck and all of that. But they had a different leader and in a different part of campus. And so when I came over, our campus obviously had opened back up with new vision at the top, and we were placed in a new building, which really got us to think about, well, really, what is going to be our identity moving forward? So there's a new place called Campus Village, has 1,800 beds. So the year before, I was actually at a small liberal arts college that had 1,800 students in the entire university. There were that many people just in this little village that has 4 buildings. And this here you can see is Campus Village 4. This is where we were housed. Now, I didn't have any say into the cohort that I inherited that year. Those decisions were made before I got there. But we had about 70 students. And as I looked through the roster, it seemed like wonderful students, as all students are, most students are. But there was kind of a lack of diversity. Overwhelmingly, the most common demographic was male business students. Now, I like business students. They're a great population. I'm so glad that we have them there. And yet, that's not the only population that can really benefit from entrepreneurship and innovation. Now, this might sound obvious to you or to me, that when you compare, for example, music, and I could compare this with, I could use a whole bunch of other disciplines as well. A lot higher percentage of music majors will go on to be entrepreneurs than business majors, right? Most artists wind up being self-employed. Most business majors wind up working for corporations. That said, I can understand from the lens of a high school student, when you read the words entrepreneurship and innovation, it seems kind of businessy. It feels kind of businessy. So it made sense to me why such a high percentage of business students were applying to this and a low percentage of other students. Which brings me to my first big idea of today, which is I realized in that first summer that if we wanted to build a more innovative community, we needed to rebrand in some way. So entrepreneurship and innovation just wasn't going to bring together that rich, diverse mosaic that I know is so important for true innovation. So I started to think about that and ultimately came up with the idea, what if we renamed the idea community? And one reason I picked that word was because idea, it has an I and an E in it, right? It has innovation, it has entrepreneurship, but it also has a couple other letters so we could expand the scope of what it was that we stood for. So we ultimately adopted idea community, which stood for innovation, design, entrepreneurship, and action in its first kind of iteration. And by design, we were talking more about design thinking process. And action, it's about getting things done. Anyone can have an idea, you got to get it done. And so that was the first big change that happened. I went into the year, one of the features of our living learning communities at University of South Carolina is we have our own room, our own classroom, our own space. Not spectacular space, but it's ours and we can use it in any way that we wanted to. And so this is kind of one shot of part of the room so you can kind of get an idea of what we have. And the types of activities that we offered might be common for other living learning communities. We hosted weekly events around all kinds of different themes. We offered several linked courses that are open only to members of our living learning community. There are several idea clubs. We have an idea entrepreneurship club, which is student generated, where they're working to launch a business from within the idea community. So we're trying to figure that out right now. We have a media club. We have a an events club and the likes. There are even abroad trips from within the community. Right now, we're working on a trip that will be over spring break in March, going to Spain. And the idea is this is built around a reverse pitch. So we will we are identifying an actual client. We're calling them a business in Spain and a town in Spain that we're going to visit. And they share with us a reverse pitch, a problem that they are facing and they don't know how to solve. And then there will be a class. And the point of the class is for these students, this linked course, is for these students to work together on teams and solve that problem for our client. Depending on how the final version of the problem comes out, they might be working on competing projects, and then we'll have competition or reveal there, and they'll choose the one they like best, or they might be working on different parts of the same problem. And then we go to Spain, we learn more about it, we build a relationship with the client, and ultimately pitch and hear their feedback. So these are some of the kinds of activities that have been really valuable and high impact for our living learning community. They started in the first year. Now I'm in year 2, but in that first year, we really had to start recruiting for year 2. And I'm still thinking about this problem. How do we recruit a more diverse group of students? Now, one of the things is the only tool we have really to do this currently is through something called Admitted Student Day. So thousands of students who have been admitted to the University of South Carolina, they may or may not come. A lot of them want to come here, but they come onto campus and they do a whole bunch of things. And there's an opportunity for them to meet some of the living learning communities. It's a little crazy. We have no idea who's in the room, and they're just hundreds of people at a time. And so you kind of take a guess. They look like maybe they would be interested in our themes. We have a conversation with them. So it's maybe not the best, most targeted method. One of the issues moving into this, we thought for a while that on Admitted Student Day, they weren't going to even be able to come to Campus Village. And it does feature some really nice housing, but it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to see it and experience it for yourself. And so, but here's a problem. We ran into a wall. How can we show people our building if they don't even come to our building? And that's what innovators do. When you're confronted with an obstacle, try and find a solution that's even better than the one you would have had the obstacle not appeared. So we decided, let's create a VR film about 2.5 minutes long that showcases our space and lets people meet our students talking about various things that are of interest to them. So that was part of kind of our way of meeting new people. Moving into year 2, this is how things looked. So we had 93 residents, up from 70, so we definitely increased our numbers. We had a great gender balance, almost 50-50, and a wider array of majors and backgrounds. So it really felt like this rebranding effort worked, and it spoke to a larger group of students. In fact, we have a bunch of biologists and nursing majors this year, in addition to business types folks and media folks and engineers and things like that. Which brings me to the second big idea. So now we're thinking about how are we going to move forward? Because while I'm glad that we expanded from 70 to 90, really the vision, I'd like it to be twice as big, which has some advantages and some challenges. Our whole financial model comes from student fees that students pay in. So we have more students, we have more money. That means we can have more impact in different ways. But of course, the bigger you get, the less personal something can be. So you have to kind of balance that and figure out how can we make big feel small and small feel. So the second idea going into this now third year is to unite and divide. Let me explain to you what I mean. Now, when I took over the idea community, I was trying to think of what does an idea community look like? Probably my first suggestion would have been that we should have a makerspace, right? Where people can make creative things and bring them to life. Unfortunately, from my perspective at that time, well, fortunately for the university, unfortunately for that vision, there was already such a community. They're called Rotos. They were also located in the new campus village, just one building over, and they had quite a nice makerspace. Here's a picture of it. So you can see if you look through the doors on the right, you can't really see them there, but there are a bunch of 3D printers in there. There are laser cutters here, all kinds of art supplies and filming materials and recording materials. You can see there's even a video game that was made by students who were in the community a few years ago. So all kinds of cool things that are there. But it already existed. So in the initial iteration, I was like, well, I guess if they make stuff, we dream stuff. We are the thinkers on campus. But it's very easy to see what a maker space is and to understand what it is. But what is a thinker? What is an idea person? I mean, everyone has ideas. So are we just Post-it notes and Sharpies, or is there something more to what it is that we bring to the table? So moving into our third year, we had lots of conversations about the most powerful way to do this. And one of the things that we've decided is to merge these two communities because there was overlap. And instead of taking so much care to make sure that we have distinctive identities, we're just going to join at the hip and become the idea community. In fact, the D, design, will become essentially what Rotos was because it was a design space, a maker space. So that's one way that we're unifying to move forward. But then there's this issue that I know that a diverse environment of students from a bunch of different backgrounds is more impactful, leads to more innovation, and maybe some friendships that would never happen otherwise than if you're in a homogeneous environment. I know that, and anyone listening probably has seen evidence of that. But you can understand from the perspective of someone graduating from high school looking, where am I going to room? It's just human nature to say, I want to be with other people who do kind of the same thing that I do. So how do you offer that kind of familiarity while also having the diversity that we need? We have some other groups on campus that are for a single major. And my sense is, well, they're already going to meet those people anyway. Do they really need to live with them too? But it makes sense. It's very clear to students. So we decided this next year to take a different approach. First of all, that's our acronym, Innovation, Design, Entrepreneurship, and Action. I decided this needs to change a little bit. Two of the words. So this will be the new acronym: Impact, Design, Entrepreneurship, and Arts. So I changed the I and the A. Because if you want that innovative community, you got to have the business folks, you got to have the engineers, got to have some educators, and you have to have the artists. Because artists are wired differently. They view the world through different lenses. They approach problem solving in a different way. We really want to have them as a key element of our ecosystem through here. So how do we do this? And my big idea is, what if we create 4 distinct groups, I, D, E, and A, that each target specific majors with specific interests, but then they're also part of a community. So sometimes just one group would do something just by themselves, or maybe 2 groups work together, or you create an event that's for all 4 groups. And sometimes you might even want to build a team. So you've got an I person, a D person, an E person, and an A person. So you can utilize it in all kinds of different ways. So let me go through these. This is kind of how I'm thinking about it. So the first one is the impact group. These are about positive change makers, people that want to change the way that our society works for the better. So it's not limited to this, but we've identified these 6 majors or interests: social work, education, law, criminal justice, healthcare, political science. We don't actually have an undergrad law degree, but we do have undergraduates who are interested in that. And so if they're thinking about becoming positive change makers, the impact group would be a great fit for those individuals. And so I think people really like to see, oh, I'm going to be with those other folks who do something similar to me. Then there's the design group. These are the visual creators, like Rodos had been from visual arts. And you know, we hadn't really tapped into our visual art community, ironically, even though we have a great visual art program. We are part of this model moving forward is we are now going to be partnering with academic leaders from across campus so that they can market the living learning community specifically to their populations. So for example, the visual artist might say, hey, this design group could be great for you. You will have 24/7 access to this makerspace, and that will bring that demographic into our community. We also have a fashion design major in a totally different college. We have media arts in a different college, and of course, engineering and the likes. The third group will be the entrepreneurship group, and that focuses on more businessy kinds of things. Sports management is actually the second biggest major on our campus, but it's like a different kind of business degree. It's not part of the business school. Our first biggest is biology, and tourism and leadership, those kinds of things. And then the fourth group will be the arts group, which is really more focused on performing arts because visual arts are under the design group. So music, theater, dance, comedy, literary arts, entertainment management, and the likes. So that's a big idea, totally different way about approaching population building and bringing in the right mix of people where folks feel like they have colleagues and they will also be living and learning alongside people from different backgrounds. This is how we solve the world, in my opinion. So then we get to the third big idea for today, which is, well, it's a vision to build. You know, I told you at the beginning, we had just moved to Campus Village, and it's very nice, but it's not a creative space. I feel like they built housing and then they said, let's put a creative community here. And it got me thinking, in part, after I had a great conversation with Victor, it got me thinking about what if we flip the equation? What if we build a creative space and then have some living learning spaces and communities in that same area? So here was my vision, to build something called the Idea Community at the heart of campus. There will be a creativity and entrepreneurship hub serving the entire campus that has 4 living learning communities attached to it. Well, how am I going to do this? You know, I'm just a lowly faculty member. How on earth am I going to get a huge new building constructed? Well, I got to figure that out. And the first part was to figure out, how am I going to sell this? How am I going to pitch this? What are some of the great outcomes that would come from it? Well, it would empower our students, help prepare them for success, amplify the number of student-run ventures that we have, catalyze an innovative culture across the entire university, and really distinguish our university. I think what happens so much of the time today is people look at a number of different universities and they finally decide, I want to go to USC, and then I guess I'll live in Idea Community. But what if we flip the equation and instead they say, I really want to be part of Idea, I guess I'll go to USC. So I found the leader on campus who's really the most creative person up there, one of those creative visionaries, the VP of Student Affairs. And I said, Rex, here's my proposal. What do you think? And he told me, you know, we are always building housing. Nobody else has come to me with any kind of vision. I love it. But can you flesh it out a little bit more? Give me some more specifics. And I said, you know, I could do that, but then it's just my ideas. What about if I get together an interdisciplinary faculty and staff team and we put something together and pitch it to you? He said, green light. So we went forward, and this is a little bit about our proposal for a brand new space. So you guys ready? Drum roll, please. Are you ready to see what this thing might look like? Here you go. Welcome to the new Idea Community. It probably will not look like that, but it would be super great if we could capture your imagination right away, that you know something super special is happening here. You have that traditional campus right around it and something very, very different. So to have a breathtaking exterior, 50,000 square feet of campus resources available to everyone, and 4 living, learning communities, 4 residential floors around it. Now, why would students visit? Well, to cultivate innovation and innovative ideas, to explore new skills, whether they're starting from scratch or building upon a framework, to build projects, including interdisciplinary projects, and to access equipment. We have lots of equipment at the university that's only available to people in certain majors. This would exist for the whole campus. To engage in new technologies and grow their network and attend events, there are a lot of reasons students would visit. Now, here's what we think. This is not exact renderings, but here's to ignite the imagination. The big open space, the 50,000 square feet would have a large flexible open area. We want to be able to change it, move the walls, use it for different kinds of events and purposes. So a lot of openness in there, but we would also have special enclosed spaces. We'd like to have a student-run cafe that is actually run by people who live there. So first-year students work within it, and upperclassmen become the management to this cafe. We would have a black box theater, not only for music, theater, and dance, but other kinds of presentations. Black boxes are great because you can move things around. A number of maker spaces, a recording studio, which I guess is another kind of thing that you make, a film and photo lab. Have student business rooms where student teams can apply to have some real estate to either serve as their storefront or just as their business office as they launch a new business. To have a technology hub, several work and office spaces. We'd love to have a demo kitchen, and then some kind of a quiet space, a Zen den or something for people to just reflect on their own creative ideas. And the signature space would be a creativity gallery. And what's really exciting about this is not just an art gallery, but that we would showcase creativity from across the university. So you might see a sculpture right next to a business model for an entrepreneurial project, right next to a marketing campaign, right next to a drug that was launched by one of our pharmacists, next to an innovative educational model, and going on. So we can really see what kind of creativity and innovation comes out of our whole campus. These are some of the kinds of activities we might host there: pitch competitions, career fairs, esports competitions, and the likes. And a signature event 3 times each term, all student-driven, is this event built around a theme that features at least folks from 3 different disciplines talking about some common related theme. The one non-negotiable for this is that the energy needs to be electric. And so no matter who goes up there, they are like a rock star, just receiving screaming ovations for everything that they share, whether it's spoken or performance or something else. The living learning communities will have 4 different residential areas for each IDENA. Very important that half our first-year students, right now, almost all of our housing at USC is for first-year students only. But to make this work, it's important that we have half first-year students and half upperclassmen, maybe even graduate students. It's unlikely that the most creative projects will come out of first-year students alone. So we want to have that kind of diversity and mix. Each floor needs to have its own identity. So right now, all of our floors look identical: the same furniture, the same blueprint, the same colors, the same look. We understand that the model, it might only be affordable to have the same shape for each of them, but we can certainly have different colors, different furniture, different look, different features, things like that. How will we know if we're successful? We will measure things like, I thought this was funny, the metric system. We will measure building traffic, how many returning guests there are, the level of engagement of our residents, number of student-driven projects, how many cups of free coffee we might give away, how well the resources are used, participation in high-impact practices, enthusiasm for folks to recommend, and student feedback and the likes. We ran this concept by a lot of students, and here's some of the things that we heard. They loved the whole concept. They love this notion of having first-year and upperclassmen all together, that it features creativity across our entire university, not just a major. They were super excited about that. Some of the questions they had, they wanted to know, how is it going to work with this modern design right by the historic part of our campus? Will it be safe? How different is it from the student union? Will they have 24/7 access? How long will it take to get this thing built? Some of the ideas they had, what if each year residents worked collaboratively on a big legacy project? On spaces to name them. And they thought it would be cool to live there, to have even the application process. So if you want to, at least for upperclassmen, you want to live back in the building, we're going to interview you and figure out about your dreams. And so to get that kind of practice and make sure that we have the right kind of people that will really take advantage of what we have to offer. So those are some of my big ideas about innovation and living learning communities. First thing we needed to do was to rebrand, get out of that business language, business speak, and become the idea community. Second, to unite and to divide, to take some different communities that were almost competing with each other and marry them together, and yet create these targeted groups so that students understand they'll be surrounded by some people with similar interests, and then bring them under the umbrella of the same community. And finally, let's build a new huge $100 million business building at the center of our campus. We've identified a place for it, and now we've got to raise some money and get the stakeholders all in alignment on this. So that's a little bit about some of my big ideas. Thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments?
Thank you so much, David. That was amazing to see the creativity and some of the unconventional things you're doing to bring in some of those more diverse majors and bring the creative density together. One question that we have is, what are some projects that have inspired your vision for South Carolina on campus?
What are some projects just in general
that have inspired this new vision for an LLC?
I mean, I think, you know, I talked at the beginning about USC creativity and working across the entire university, and just discovering how much richness is there and being kind of a connector of one area to another area. We often feel so, you know, whether you're at a university with 2,000 students or 20,000 students or 200,000 students, I think we all feel strapped. And yet there is so much duplication. We often do so many things for so few people, instead of thinking about how can we do less better and really build capacity in that way. So I think those kinds of interdisciplinary projects where we do, you know, can we invest our energy in something where we spend 100 hours to impact, I'm just making up numbers, but 1,000 students, rather than 12 hours to impact 4 students here and 7 students here and whatever. So it adds up to being 380 hours to have a much smaller impact. So are there ways we can be smarter? Of course, sometimes you want to work on a very small scale. So I think that was a really life-changing kind of experience for me. But I would say another thing that I have seen is just, you know, you mentioned at the beginning, I run a lot of innovation games. So these are experiences with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a problem to solve. And teams are working on this. And at the beginning of a game, you have a very carefully architected process, but you don't know where it's going to lead. And when I started running these, I started working, whether it was just with musicians or healthcare professionals or government employees, working with kind of homogenous groups, right? One kind of perspective. And as we started adding other kinds of people in there, the ideas got so much better and bigger and more ambitious and different, and having these kind of wild card elements. So I think those interdisciplinary experiences have really shaped my visioning for how to approach almost anything, and certainly a project like this.
That's fantastic. I think that really points out how important it is to cultivate creativity in the community that you're building and having all of those different perspectives and backgrounds. Well, David, thank you so much for your time. That was a fantastic presentation.